Hello book readers, this is the B-Side Book Reviews, and today we are going to take a look at a saintly biography. I say saintly because it is about Saint Francis of Assisi, written by Omer Englebert. A definitive biography of Saint Francis which can scarcely be surpassed, says the cover. Okay, doesn't matter if you're Catholic or Protestant or Jewish or Islamic or Hinduist or Buddhist or confused. It's a pretty cool book about a pretty cool guy. So, grab yourself some coffee or whatever an appropriate beverage would be for a saint. I don't know, perhaps some red wine. Or perhaps some milk, maybe. Or I don't know, how about some water? Have you ever wondered what the life of a 13th century priest or friar was like? Have you ever wondered what the life of a priest or friar of any century was like? Well, if there was ever a poster child of friardom or priestdom, if those are words, it was Saint Francis. Yes, this saint basically laid out the rules and pretty much lived the philosophy that in order to get to heaven, you must first put yourself through hell. Yes, life for a Catholic holy man back in the 13th century was no picnic. They had to live without clean water, comfortable shoes, or suitable dwellings. They never had enough food to eat, and they were always susceptible to deadly diseases. In other words, they pretty much lived like everyone else back in those days. The only difference is that the priests believed that such agony brought them closer to God. And they all felt compelled to write down all their memorable misery for future reference. And I guess for, well, our future reading pleasure. Yes, pleasure. Saint Francis actually came from what we might call today as an upper middle class family. His dad was a merchant of fine linens, but the life of fine linens was not to be for our featured saint. Although he was the patron saint of merchants, he was also the saint of ecology, animal welfare, and workers' rights, not the patron saint of fine linens. Now, I couldn't find the patron saint of fine linens anywhere. I did, however, find saints for embroiderers and weavers. Of course, Saint Francis might as well have been the patron saint of poverty, because he fully believed that in order to get closer to God, one must shed himself of all material values and pretty much live the life of a homeless beggar. Not only did he embrace lady poverty, as he called it, he sought it out. And if living in the dark primitive age of the 13th century wasn't bad enough, he and his fellow friars created new and inventive ways to bring even more suffering to their already tormented life. Often they would sleep outside in the cold and find rocks to use for pillows. But why stop there? Let's go kiss some leopards as well. If frostbite and malnutrition won't make us more holy, perhaps an infectious, decaying disease will. Whatever Francis' beliefs might have entailed, such must have been effective, because he had become quite the celebrity among the friars, and had developed quite the priestly cult following. Not only did other priests follow him, but women as well. Yeah, Why should only the men get to enjoy all the fun of self-inflicted suffering? Now, this is where St. Clare and the orders of the poor ladies came into being. Now, as sacrilegious as this may sound, such a title could have been a really cool name for an early 90s grunge band. Imagine. St. Clare and the orders of the poor ladies rock the stage with Soundgarden and Pearl Jam and... okay, maybe not. Now, of course, our good saint didn't only walk the walk, but he also talked the walk. And he preached to whoever was around to listen to him, even if they weren't humans. One of Francis's most famous sermons was delivered to a flock of birds. And once his holy words even converted a savage wolf. However, our saint found that not everyone was quite so eager to hear his message. On his travels to Egypt, he tried unsuccessfully to convert the Muslim ruler there. Fortunately for our saint, the Egyptian ruler was fascinated with other religions and enjoyed debating theology with our featured saint. Now, the same could not be said for some of Francis's followers who ventured off into the land of Islam as well. Apparently, they got a little wound up and preachy with the local Muslims and completely lost their heads. Literally. Well, kudos to our author here. I'm sure the task of putting this book together from all the bits and pieces collected about our saint here was nothing less than a holy nightmare, even with divine mercy. Although the book was certainly written with the reader in mind, with each chapter giving a specific part of Francis's life, it didn't exactly, well, electrify the celestial essence of my literary soul. In fact, there were a few times that I felt like I was paying some type of penance myself just while reading it, and often found myself pleading for divine mercy and understanding regarding some of the passages that our author had me, well, drudge through. Oh yes, there was an unholy mess of symbolism and just plain stuff that I, as a devout Protestant, didn't understand and probably never will. In order to understand the practices of the Catholic Church, well, being a devout lifetime Catholic would have no doubt been quite the holy plus while reading this book. Yes! Well, I'm afraid the politics of the Catholic Church back in those days were a bit confusing to say the least, especially for someone who was raised in a good old holy roller Pentecostal church like myself. Then again, I'm guessing back in Francis's time, your average butcher, baker, candlestick maker found such pretty darn confusing as well, even if they were devout followers. Now, if you think about it, if all would have been so easy peasy concerning religion back in those days, well, we probably would have never have had Protestants. Wow, think about it. Most of the movies we see about the medieval Catholic Church usually depict those representing religion as evil, sadistic, power-hungry demons. Well, they're always burning someone at the stake or something like that. So, it was a bit refreshing to read about how gracious, generous, and humble those who followed Francis were. However, such was a bit painful to read, for these Catholic priests inflicted such painful penance onto themselves that they were literally killing themselves. Wasn't living the lifestyle of a homeless beggar penitent enough? You would think. Later in his life, our saint prayed to have the same suffering inflicted on him as Jesus suffered on the cross. And supernaturally, his prayers were answered as wounds in his hands and feet and side amazingly appeared. Now I realized that Francis felt that he could be closer to God if he were to suffer the same pain that Jesus suffered. But I was always to believe that Jesus suffered so we did not have to suffer such. But who am I to question a saint? Yes, he knew more about Christianity than I probably ever will. However, I must ask this question concerning his suffering. Wasn't abstaining from sex enough hardships? Then again, this was the 13th century, a time when most women didn't wear makeup, only bathed every few months, and probably had hair on their legs, thicker than your average beaver pelt. Yes, I would imagine abstaining from sexual relations back in those days probably wasn't that big of a challenge for both men and women. Whoa, can you imagine what the dudes must have smelled like back then? Yeah, that's something that the Renaissance fairs never really touch on. The bold smell of the medieval man. Yeah. Now, any previous interest I ever had regarding Saint Francis came from watching a Rich Mullins concert. Apparently, the contemporary gospel singer and his band were such fans of the medieval saint, they actually wrote a musical about him. Now, if everything, or even part of everything in this book is gospel, then Saint Francis was truly a remarkable man. He was the kind of guy who would give you the robe right off his back, which he did many, many, many times. Apparently, he was as close to God as any of those in the Bible. For there was a passage where divine presence was actually in a hut with him. And as one of his fellow friars approached the hut, a great light embarked from the dwelling. Wow, pretty cool. Although Francis held no high office in the church, such as, well, Pope or Cardinal, he was clearly a soul who was greatly enlightened by a far greater power. Now, one of the passages in this book here tells how he predicted a great defeat of an army. However, my favorite account was how he calmed a savage wolf that was terrorizing a small village. After having a heart-to-heart with the vicious beast, the wolf gave Francis his paw, and he lived the remainder of his wolf life in the village, peacefully among the citizens. Now, the book here claims that our saint left this world in a small hut singing hymns during his 46th year, or 44th according to Wikipedia. Now, as his soul left his body, a great flock of larks alighted from the hut's roof, and his brother friars witnessed a flaming star upon a white cloud over the water, and then it ascended into heaven. Now, if what this book tells us is true, then Saint Francis was truly a remarkable soul. And you don't even have to be Catholic to appreciate the man. Quite the cool dude. No library should be without this book. If one were to read only one book on this saint, I would recommend this one. Well, so would I. If you have any interest in Saint Francis, you might want to check this book out. I'm sure there are just tons of books written about this great man, but this is my favorite. And don't let the fact that this is the only book I've read about Saint Francis tarnish that opinion in any way. Just, if you don't have it and you want it, ask me really nice and I might send you my copy of it. I mean, I've already read it. Just read a book. Read any book. Reading will make you more saintly. And drink some milk too. Does the body good.